suffering. Now, I'm always asked, how did you get into cricket then, Jonathan? How did it start? And I think the answer to that is it's like most people get into sport. It's your parents, isn't it? They're normally the people that get you. In my case, it was my dad, who was a keen club cricketer. He was a farmer, so I was always a bit busy for him. But he loved club cricket and started my interest in the game. So when I was 11, my birthday, he took me to go see my first ever cricket match, which is a good one actually. It was a Gillette Cup final at Lord's, 1971. Lancashire against Kent. And I sat in the grandstand, little 11-year-old, watching this fast bowler tearing in from the nursery end, long run, bowling so fast. A ball, because it was sideways on the grandstand, was going and Farouk Engineer was the wicketkeeper, and bang, he was taking it back like that. And this fast bowler's name was Peter Lever. And I said to my dad, that's who I want to be. I want to be Peter Lever. And my dad looked at me, yeah, right, you're 11 years old. But Peter became my absolute sporting hero. Kind of almost obsessive, like you can be with a youngster getting involved in a sport. You know, that whole Lancashire team actually were heroes of mine. I was brought up in Cheshire, so I could still list that team off from Barry Wood, David Lloyd, down to Shuttleworth, Lever and Lee. I could go down the whole team, but Peter was my hero. He died 3 weeks ago. And I was talking to my mum about him, and she was saying, I remember how you came back that day. You were just so energised by Peter. Photo was on my bedroom wall. My brother, 2 years younger than me, spent about 4 years pinned to the back wall of the garage as he faced Peter Lever from 10 yards. You know. Peter was just the kindest, loveliest man, who I got to know really very well. And they always say you should never meet your heroes. They'll always disappoint you, but I'm very, very, very lucky and happy to have met mine. He was my inspiration in getting into the game. And my dad could see that something was sparked, and I was playing village cricket and so on, age 13, 14. 16th birthday, he took me to a very famous old coaching clinic in London, in Wandsworth, run by an old boy called Alf Gover, who I think Warren might remember, your dad said that he would. Alf Gover, Surrey in England, old fast bowler, ran this coaching clinic above a petrol station. Interesting character. I mean, he toured India with England in 1937, which would have been a pretty tough gig, I would suggest, in those days, months away from home. And sure enough, halfway through the tour, they're up country somewhere, about to start a first-class match. Half the team is ill. Dysentery, whatever it is, gone. But Alf's all right. Alf's okay. He's fit to play. And so the captain threw in the ball and said, Gover, you'll bowl the first over. And sure enough, Alf got the ball and started to come running in. He had a long run like Peter Lever, tearing in. Halfway through his run-up, he felt this most awful griping, like a dagger in his stomach. It creased him up. Oh, crikey. Well, he knew exactly what it was. He knew what it was. And clearly he had a decision to make. So thankfully, he decided just to keep running. And he ran. The batsman was waiting to face the first ball. Alf ran straight past him, through the slips. He bolted for the dressing rooms. And he always told the story with a slight twinkle in his eye. He said he lost the race by 2 yards. And then his teammates had to come and ask for the ball back as well. A bit disappointing. But that's when I became a professional, age 16. In summer holidays, I was a professional cricketer, which is a young way to start. And I left school at 18 and was signed here at Leicestershire. And there was some sort of injury crisis, because within about a month, I was playing in the first team, my debut, championship debut, against Lancashire. All my heroes, those people who I revered from the age of 11. They were Peter, who retired actually, so he wasn't playing, but David Lloyd, Bumble, my old mate, he was playing. Took 4 balls to get him out. He was my first victim. And a few years ago, the phone rang at home, and he said, "What were you doing 25 years ago today?" I said, "I've no idea, Bumble, what was I doing?" He said, "You got me out, you bastard," and put the phone down. So I still tease him. He was my first one. But the joy of playing for Leicestershire then, and we have got Leicester supporters here, haven't we, I assume, given where we are?
We certainly have.
We're so good. Well, thank you, John. The beauty of playing for Leicestershire those days was you got to watch David Gower bat for free. So always a little murmur when I say his name. David Gower, who got a role, and he was special, wasn't he? And he really was special. And in sport, I guess it's the same in all sports, but certainly in cricket, I think in tennis, there are these sportsmen, sportswomen who are just that little bit better than even the very best. They've just got something extra. Why was Andre Agassi always in the right part of the court at the right time? How was David Gower able to make facing 90 miles per hour bowling look so easy? And in cricket, certainly batting, we call it time. You know, sort of knowing and touching nose, say, well, that's got a bit of extra time. It's a very hard thing to define. And I wish I could take you all out, pad you up, and take you out to go and face 90 miles per hour fast bowling. Matthew's laughing, he's been there, he knows what it's like. But I mean, actually, I think we're about the same quality batting wise. I had to endure watching you bat all too often. However, we are no better qualified than anyone in this room to bat, and yet we would have to go out and face 90 miles per hour fast bowling. I wish you could sit and watch it. You can watch the telly. You can sit there at a test match and say, "Oh, that ball's going a bit fast." That ball is a piece of rock. It's going at 90 odd miles an hour from 20 yards. When that bowler lets go of it, you have got 2/5 of a second. 2/5 of a second from when he lets it go to when it arrives. And you've got to do something with less than half a second. And it's terrifying. And I experienced David batting only once, because in those 15 years of playing with David, I actually did a bat with him once. It was remarkable, really. But somehow I must have survived as night watchman the night before. And so next morning, 5 to 11, we walked out over the boundary road together. Got a few yards in, the PA system at Grace Road crackled into life. Resuming their innings for Leicestershire, David Gower and Jonathan Agnew. Thought, doesn't get much better than that, does it? Walked out. And it's about halfway to the middle that the full horror of the situation struck me. Because in those days, in the 1980s, I honestly didn't care who I was bowling at the next day. Oh, Viv Richards, Gordon Greenwich, bring them on. It was who you had to bat against as a complete inept coward. And if I say that we were playing Hampshire, there'll be a little murmur, and you'll know who I'm talking about. And I saw him peeling his sweater off and heading to the non-striker's bowler's end, Malcolm Marshall, who was fiercely competitive, very, very fast, a very nice man. We lost him far too young. Very fast bowler. He always said sorry to me when he hit me. Thought it was nice. You know, get one in the ribs. Oh, crap. Sorry, Malcolm. Don't worry, Malcolm. But I went to the non-striker's end, and I was going to stay there as I watched him bowl these missiles at Gower. I mean, just. And Gower would get on the front foot, and he'd go, boom, play it to mid-off, and then wink. And not that Malcolm say, well bowled. What? Short ball, past the nose, swing out of the way, a little bit of width, bang, 4 runs. It was incredible. It was the most amazing 10 minutes I'd ever had at the crease. And when I walked off, and the umpires repaired my shattered stumps, I said to myself, never forget what you just experienced. Because you've just opened a little window there into another world. These two were playing their own game. They were playing their own contest in a way. The two of the very best, the top of their game. They were playing their own contest within the main contest. And it was absolutely eye-opening. It was extraordinary. So I used to travel with David. I used to go on the away trips around. Every Tuesday night and Friday night, travel up and down the country. I was his navigator, which was utterly pointless. You sit there with a map, there's no GPS in those days, with a map, turn left here, David. Oh, you're not going straight on. Okay, well, fair enough. He's a dreamy sort of a character. You have to nudge him every now and then to keep away. But the reason I travelled with him was because I wanted to learn. I wanted to get better. I wanted to be a better player of fast bowling because I was a coward. I got hit horribly in the mouth when I was younger, and I never really got over it. Teeth and bits of lip and stuff. It's nasty. So my confidence never came back. I thought if I just travel with David, Just tap him up. He'll help me. So I'd say, come on, David, how do you play fast bowling? What should I do? And it was terribly simple. He said, all you've got to do is watch from 20 yards away. Watch where the bowler lets the ball go. If he lets go of it there, that'll be a full length ball. It'll land round about here, and you get on the front foot and you play it like that to mid off. But if he lets go of it there, well, that's a bouncer. It's around your head. I mean, you're going to get there. So I said, David, I can't see the difference between that and that from 20 yards away. And he said, well, I can't help you then. That was it. But I'd do anything to avoid facing this sort of bowling because I was a coward. It's a horrible business to go out there and have to do it. I would do anything. And this incident, I mean, it was true. I tell rather against myself, but it does demonstrate the lengths I would go to avoid this. And that when David was away playing for England, he was our captain. Also, our vice captain stepped up to become a captain, and that was a different kettle of fish. David was my friend, looked after me. Peter Willie would come up and be captain. Hard as nails, a humorless Geordie. A good mate of mine, by the way. But anyway, this is the sake of the story. You know, hard as nails. He scored a lot of runs against West Indies, to be fair. Brave. You know, wouldn't take a backward step. And I used to tease Peter. Verbal jousting. It wasn't really his thing. And so as revenge, he'd either hit me, or he'd make me night watchman, because he knew I was terrified. Night watchman, for those who don't know, night watchman, strange thing in cricket. It's when the fielding team comes off with about 25 minutes to bat. One of them, usually the number 11, the fast bowler who's bowled his boots off all day for his team, is told by his captain to get his pads on and go out and bat against the opposition fast bowlers who have been sitting down, drinking tea and doing some crossword all day, and they've just got 20 minutes to run in and bowl as fast as they like. And you're told to go out and do that instead of somebody in your team who's actually paid to do it. It's a very strange situation. Matthew's done it a number of times. All felt very sorry for you. But anyway, we're walking off. Peter Willie says, "You're night watchman. Get him on." I said, "Oh, Peter, come on. I've been bowling." He said, "No, get him on." And he looked out the window. He said, "You'll be in any moment. Malcolm's bowling." Play Hampshire again. So how long does it take? How long does it take to get padded up? Are those pads, the buckles on and off? I mean, it took forever. You know, but, well, eventually you're ready to go, aren't you? You pad it up. And sure enough, there's this howl comes through the window from outside. Hazard! And when you looked out, you're in. And something makes you do it. Although you are actually determined that you're not going to go out there, something makes you stand up, put your gloves on, and walk out the back. And I liken it to being in the dentist's waiting room when you're sitting there. And you hear these appalling noises coming through the wall. And you say to yourself, I'm not going in there. I am not going in. But then the door opens, and a kindly nurse says, Mr. Agnew, he'll see you now. And next thing you're in there, and the lights and your mouth's open, and it's horrible. That's what going out to bat was like for me. You're out there in the middle, and you take guard, and you look up and you look around the field, see where the fielders are. And there's nobody there. You're like, oh, you're all and there's a couple here, that's the one off the head, yeah, thank you, yeah, fantastic, okay. Over the bat, come on, be brave, be brave. You saw Malcolm Marshall in the distance. He came tearing in, he bowled his first ball, and I still haven't seen it. Something went like that. I thought, oh, God! And Bobby Parks, as the wicketkeeper, went bang, he took the ball way back there. I remember my knees going, thinking, what are you doing? What are you doing out here? You're going to get killed. And at Gress Road, on the front of the pavilion, there's a balcony. And that's where players sit who are waiting to bat next, and that sort of thing. I looked up there looking for a bit of moral support from my teammates. And Peter Willie was sitting on that balcony, and he was laughing. Very nice to him. And he was in next. Come on, over the bat, come on. Be brave. Malcolm tore him and said he had bowled me before. And he bowled this thunderbolt down the leg side. Whoosh! Didn't touch anything. Bang! The wicketkeeper took it again. But it is quite hostile and aggressive and excitable those last sort of closing minutes of a day, somebody somewhere, and it might even be somebody in the crowd, let out one of those, say, excitable but withdrawn and retracted appeals. How's that? Oh no, sorry. And I heard this, and I thought, that'll do. Oh no, it's terrible cowards, isn't it? I thought that'll do. So I took my gloves off, put my bat under my arm, and I walked off. The umpire was a nice old boy called Sam Cook, who used to bowl left-arm spin for Gloucestershire. And he was a bit surprised when I walked past him. But he sought me out the next morning. He said, "Oh, Jonathan, good lad. I thought I might have heard something. Wasn't sure. Good lad for walking. Thanks so much." And Malcolm didn't know what was going on. He was going to bowl the next ball. He turned around as I walked past me. "Where are you going, man? What's going on?" And I said, "Oh, I'm out. Well, Malcolm, high five." It's a sadly true story. But that, I promise you, is what facing that sort of bowling could do to that. But I guess I'd say one thing. See, I was a bowler. I wasn't a batsman. And we've heard today about this Ashes winner who's here. You've actually got 2 Ashes winners who are here in this room today. You didn't know I was an Ashes winner, did you? Did you know I was an Ashes winner? No. 2000, no. What year is it? 1985. Get the year right. 1985. Alan Border's Australians, David Gower's English, Ashes winning. I don't think it was my match figures of 0 for 90, but I think it might have been my valuable 2 not out that steered the Ashes out of the way. I played 1 test, was dropped. This is the point. I was dropped, well, that's useless. And Richard Ellison came in and bowled Australia out the next 2 tests. Won the Ashes. Yes, I'm an Ashes winner. Vital 2 not out. But it made me realise I knew I wasn't good enough. And I played for England, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't good at bowlers hockey. And you watch these bowlers and players coming in now, and the good ones can just grab an opportunity. They belong. I just felt, you got there's notches all the time, from grassroots all the way up. Each step is, you've got to be a bit better. You've got to be psychologically stronger. And I knew I wasn't quite good enough for that. But it did open my eyes to thinking about what I was going to do outside cricket. Because it's a very precarious occupation in those days. I mean, you were employed from April to September. You walked into Mike Turner's office at Grace Road in September. There were 2 envelopes waiting there. One had your P60 in, the other had your P45. If you're lucky, you got the one with that in and a little note saying "see you in April the 4th" or whatever. And that was it. There was no work, there was no employment, there was no assistance in getting any employment. But if you had a family and a mortgage, you had to get work. So I'll do anything. I mean, I drove a lorry for a couple of winters delivering asbestos, which I slightly regret now. Any Leicester folks, Smith Brothers Asbestos up at Freeman's Common. I drove the old diesel, as they called it, till the steering failed and went straight into a hedge. I made windows at Trevor Bennett's in Ratby. Does that ring any bells anywhere, I wonder? T.L. Bennett, he was a big, actually, he did a lot of work for cricket, and he was a great benefactor. He gave me work for a year or so, and his windows were, God, my windows would never have got through to the guarantee. But that's what you had to do. And then one year, John Rawling, a name you might remember, John Rawling, terrific BBC radio commentator for athletics and boxing, came up to me in the cricket pub at Grace Road. He said, "What are you doing this winter then, Jonathan?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Why don't you come and work with me at Radio Leicester? I think you'll like it. You won't get paid anything, but it'll be a good experience. I think you'll be good at it." And it was John, purely John, coming up that day at the Cricketers Pub, who got me to Radio Leicester. And I wouldn't be sitting here today without it. I don't suppose. I just fell in love with radio and the whole means of communication that radio is. It's such a friendly medium. It is companionship. And you hear some of the stories that we get of people who listen, and it's like, oh, like a religion, but it's not. It really plays a huge part in their life. In a way that TV doesn't. I mean, television is brilliant. It's there on the screen and on the wall, you watch it, and it takes you to a place. But radio commentary, a lot of people come to me and say, "Oh, I remember exactly where I was when I was listening to you and Ben Stokes did that 4 ahead of me to win that test match. I know exactly where I was." Yes, you do, because you've actually got to work. You've You've got to make that commentary into an image. You've got to picture it in your mind, and it burns. It burns. That memory burns on the brain. So it's just such a wonderful, friendly medium that I was lucky enough to find. I wrote a bit for a newspaper, Today newspaper. You remember that?
Yeah.
Well, why didn't you buy it then? You bastards! It went bust. Everyone always says, "Oh, that's a Rebel Today." None of you ever bought it. I was their cricket correspondent. Thanks very much. The first colour newspaper. You used to get blue ink all over your fingers. And I went off to Australia in 1991 as their cricket correspondent. The Graham Gooch tour, best known for David Gower flying his tiger moth, pretty disastrous tour. Halfway through it, Chris Martin Jenkins said that he was going to leave the BBC and go join the Daily Telegraph, and I applied for the job and got it. So that's it. Kind of the progression moved on. What have I dropped there? Microphone, sorry. And that's sort of how the progression went. I ended up working on this amazing programme, Test Match Special, which has incredible broadcasters working on it, clearly. The producer deserves a lot of credit, Dr. Peter Baxter, who just allowed people to be themselves and not feel restricted and constrained. It was a bit more easy in those days, I'll be honest, than it is maybe live broadcasting these days, with pitfalls now. But then it was just go and go and enjoy yourself and make friends with the people who are listening. And there is not another radio sports programme that has the same relationship with its audience as Test Match Special does. It's quite remarkable. 70 years it's been going now. Characters like Henry Blofeld. You'll never find another broadcaster like Henry. Such energy and effort and enthusiasm. Every ball was an event. He brought every game of cricket to life. And it wasn't the same game the rest of us were watching necessarily. But he always brought it to life. Christopher, I mentioned, wonderful broadcaster, writer, and not someone, he wasn't a professional. I think these days it's a mistake, but commentary boxes are just full of people who used to play the game professionally, and you have a different relationship with the sport. When it's been your job, it's different. A bit more cynical about that game maybe. You know some of the shortcuts and what are the things to do. But if you're just a fan, as Christopher always was, you never lose that unblemished, shall we say, attitude towards the sport that I had when I first went down to Alf's. I often look back at that. Richie Benno, worked with Richie, the doyen of television and extraordinary disciplinarian in terms of timekeeping and so on. Brilliant. But the one who obviously had the biggest impact on me was Brian Johnston, who was just the most amazingly relaxed, easy broadcaster. I had 3 years with him, and I know if I hadn't had those 3 years with Brian, he was 50 years older than me. He's like a granddad to me. I wouldn't be the broadcaster that I am today. I know I wouldn't. I know what I want to be, but I wouldn't have the guts to have done it. And Brian kind of gave me wings. We shared the same silly, puerile, innuendo-y sense of humour, which I latched onto quite quickly because I sat down with him the first year. I'd never contacted, you see, so I sat down next to Brian, and he would sit down with a scorecard and a listener's letter in case he had something to do. It got a bit sticky. And I realised that, of course, what you should do is when you distract him, say, over there, Brian, good Lord, and you would replace that letter with one you'd written yourself. And then after about 10 minutes you'd say, interesting looking letter there, what's that? Oh yes, well, dear team, or whatever it may be, dear TMS, why is it in cricket that an appeals procedure is necessary? If the umpire thinks a batsman's out, just give it out. Stop all the bad behaviour, that sort of thing. This comes from Ivor Biggin, and he's but I know it's puerile, it's silly, it got me through the day. Hugh Jarse was our old favourite. He never saw coming, but he loved all of that stuff. And innuendo just runs deeply through cricket. You can't avoid it. The cricket language is full of innuendo. And Brian and I both share this love of stitching up the person sitting next to you. So in my case, it's Phil Tuffers. Tuffers can't cope with any of this. He can't get his head around the fact that I entirely legitimately live in a place called the Beaver, which I didn't know was a real word until I worked with Tuffers. I welcomed listeners to Trent Bridge one day. So, well, good morning everyone, lovely to have you here. Exciting day in prospect. Phil Tufnell's here. Bit damp in the Beaver this morning, Tuffers. And he vanished onto the table. He didn't come back again. So now we've had everything going on in the Beaver. I think foraging in the Beaver was my favourite. So the point is, innuendo just runs right through cricket. And with Brian sharing my love of that and our silly sense of humour, we did share a moment, which I think is written in the programme there, has been described as being the best piece of radio commentary that has ever been. I'm referring to our old friend, the leg over. Now, if that ever comes up again, at some sort of contest for the greatest piece of commentary, please don't vote for it, because it wasn't commentary, it was just a cock-up, really, based entirely due to the fact that Brian Johnston couldn't get his head around the fact that Ian Botham didn't get his leg over. I mean, Ian got his leg over everything. So this was part of the issue here. I love this. I mean, at the time it was all a bit awkward and John thought he'd let the side down and so on. But I'm going to play it because, well, I love listening to the leg over. Yeah, have a listen.
Both of them, the end out, most extraordinary way.
And he knew, isn't it? Tragic thing about it, he knew exactly what was going to happen. He tried to step over the stumps and just flicked a bail with his right.
He wanted to try to do the splits over it, and unfortunately the inner part of his thigh must have just removed the bail.
He just didn't quite get his leg over.
Anyhow, he did well indeed, batting 131 minutes and hit 3 fours. And then we had Lewis playing extremely well, with his 47 not out. I guess do stop. He was joined by De Freitas, who was in for 40 minutes, a useful little partnership there. They put on 35 in 40 minutes, and then he was caught by Jean Porsche. Lawrence, always entertaining, 35 minutes, hit a 4 over the weekends. Angus, for goodness sake,
Yes, Lawrence. Extremely well.
He was out for the and 12 minutes, and then was caught by Hayes off pass from the 2, and there were 54 extras, and England were all out for 419. I'm stopping.
It is a classic, I know. Just don't vote for it again. Right. So, I'm just sort of bringing things to a natural conclusion in a way, in that we do have this constant, I mean, it does get me through the day of just trying to stitch up, particularly poor old Tuffers. And bear in mind, we don't have a script, so everything is, you're creating, whatever's happening out in front of you, you've got to create. And so the mind is going, it's only going to do 20 minutes, going, and you're trying to create something out of that to land on Tuffers, okay, in my case. And this example is my absolute favourite of everything that can go wrong in cricket commentary happening with just a bit of creativity to land it at the end. And then we do sometimes get some quite difficult names. Quinton de Kock was one who was always a bit of a nightmare. And it didn't matter how many times you said to yourself in advance, I'm not going to say it today. De Kock's out! Oh no. You know, the Willies, what about Peter? I mean, there are just names there that are awkward. And this particular occasion is the Champions Trophy final, 2019 Lords. And it's against India and Pakistan. Turn up, and I look at the Indian team sheet. 1 down to number 11. Yep, that's the team I expected. Excellent, no problem there. Turn the page over. Pakistan. Number 1, yeah, number 2. Oh, crikey. Number 2. How am I going to say that? Now, I'm going to say a rude word here. And I apologise. No, I apologise for that. But this is the point of the story. What do you do when someone you're going to have to be commentating on goes by the name of Fucker Zaman? I've got Brian Johnson on my shoulder saying, "Go on, Agnes, you can do it." I think, well, and it's Radio 4, you know. Fuckers on. So I came up with a plan. While he was batting, he was Zaman. When he got out, I mean, as long as I'm on, no one else would do it, but well, you know, when he got out, couple of fuckers. He's on his way, won't see him again, and it's kind of done, and there was a bit of a laugh. But I miscalculated because, of course, these days, the third umpire can get involved, video replays and evidence. And a batsman who you thought had gone, and you won't go see again, can be recalled. He can return, and he can carry on his innings. So you've got all this going on, so there's no script. The one thing you have to do is keep an entirely straight face. You can't laugh at your own mischief. You have to keep a straight face because actually you want the audience, the listeners, to think, he didn't really say that, did he? You actually want that. When the answer is obviously, well, of course he did. But there's that little bit of mystery, and you can't laugh at your own stuff anyway. So Phil Tuffle is beside me. His eyes are going like a sort of demented fruit as we now go back to the Oval, 2019. 8 for no wicket. And he goes Bumrah over the wicket and bowls to Zaman, and he's caught line! Flashing outside the off stump, and fucker's gone. Caught behind. And listen to that cheer, a great roar from the Indian supporters here. The first bit of width that he's been given. Yeah. And he threw the bat at it. Yeah. And he's hanging on for a moment as if the third umpire appeared there, or the fourth umpire, and fucker's hanging about. He doesn't want to go. And they're checking the no ball, perhaps. Oh! And let's have a look. It's a no ball. It's a reprieve for fucker. He'll come back. He will come back. No ball, and it's going to be a free hit as well. Yes. What a lucky chap. That's an example of when things do work and your brain's going and you just lather the killer brother. Anyway, there we go, that's more than enough. Interesting year coming up. India this summer. 5 test matches are a good side. England's best laid Ashes planned. What will happen to them in the course of the next 3 or 4 months, we shall see. Who's going to be fit? Is Ben Stokes going to be fit? And then of course Australia and the Ashes after that. And it's my 20th Ashes series, it's incredible. I've only ever seen England win there once. So I'm determined it should happen this time again. But it's all on BBC Radio, all on Test Match Special. And I'm sure I can count on you, maybe not during the night in Australia, but for much of it for listening anyway. Thank you for, first of all, thank you for listening to Test Match Special. That comes from everybody really, on that Test Match Special team. We don't take that for granted in the least. We try very hard to be entertaining, to be accurate, and to be fair, and to be impartial, all those sorts of things you want sports commentary to be. And thank you very much for listening to me today. It's a wonderful setup. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.